Hello, and welcome to Informatically Speaking, a Greater Delaware Valley ANIA podcast designed to promote knowledge sharing in the field of nursing informatics, locally, nationally, and globally within our unique industry. At GDV ANIA, we are committed to providing opportunities for professional development with the goal of advancing nursing informatics practice. I'm your host, Constance McLaughlin. In today's episode, we welcome Dr. Nancy Beale, accomplished nurse and informaticist, previously VP of Clinical Systems at NYU and currently president of Telemetrics. Thanks for joining us, Nancy. So happy to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell us about your nursing informatics journey. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, I'd love to. So I started, like most nurses, in clinical practice, and I worked for about 16 years in a variety of settings, primarily perinatal nursing, labor and delivery, in roles everything from staff nurse to director. And after about 16 years, I was recruited to work at Epic. And I took the deep leap into healthcare IT. I will say, when I was working in a staff role in my clinical practice, I did have some experience as a champion, super user of sorts when we had a few different technical projects. So I always kind of had that bent toward the combination of care and technology. And what really drew me to moving forward with a role when I was asked to join Epic was so many times in clinical practice, I would be using a piece of technology and say, wow, who created this? Did they ever even talk to a nurse?
Right.
And so, my goal was to try to make things better for clinicians and patients. Just another really vantage point of caring for patients in a different way is how I have always explained it. And now I care for patients and clinicians, right? As well as their families to a certain degree. So I left, went to work for Epic, was there for about 9 years. And had the great privilege to work with many clinical leaders across the country at some fabulous organizations, very well-known large organizations. And my clinical experience really served me well in that role because I could translate what was in clinical practice, their workflow, and learned across the years about the technologies and how those technologies fit or didn't fit in terms of those workflows. So really, in redesigning workflow, it's important to understand the intended outcome. A lot of times the developers or technologists will say, oh, how would you like it to work? And the clinicians say one thing, and the developers may hear something completely different. And so that translation work that a clinical informaticist does is very important. I liken it akin to, when a nurse is caring for a patient and a specialist comes in and uses a lot of medical terminology and walks out of the room 5 minutes later, and the patient says, what did the doctor say? Right? And then the nurse translates. It's very similar to that. Mm-hmm. So I left Epic, pursued some consulting roles, and that's where I landed in New York City, initially as a consultant, and was then asked to take on the role of Vice President of Clinical Systems and Integration at NYU Langone Health System. The work that I had an opportunity to participate in and lead in New York was really some exciting and amazing work with a fabulous team. I had a team of about 250 team members. And it was not only the Epic applications or Epic system that were in my portfolio, but about 100 different other clinical applications. So pretty much any clinical technology or system that was used across a health system fell under my umbrella. And I had a great team who worked to keep that all rolling. And we did some very fun and innovative work while I was there. Very much enjoyed that work. But during that time, I also commuted and lived between my home state in Wisconsin and also in Manhattan. So I would fly every Sunday night and fly home every Friday night. And I did that for about 6 years and decided it was time to make a lifestyle change.
Right.
And very much miss my colleagues and NYU Langone Health System, but really needed to make a different lifestyle choice. So I took a break and got my PhD. Not many people frame it that way, but that was what I did when I left NYU. Spent during the time that I was working on my PhD, one of my former colleagues from Epic, Dr. Brett Schillingstead, he and I had stayed in contact, and I knew he was working on a new company called Telemetrics. And I had said to him, when you get to the point of operationalizing it, keep me in mind, let me know. And I was about a year out from finishing my PhD when he reached out to me. So timing maybe could have been better. But I joined Telemetrics about 2.5 years ago, initially as a CNIO and chief nurse, and chief cook and bottle washer. When you participate in a startup company, oftentimes you wear many hats. And I have across the time that I've been with Telemetrics, but more recently, about 6 months ago, I was promoted to the role of president. Telemetrics is a digital health company that started initially as a remote patient monitoring company. And while remote patient monitoring is the core of our business, we now also integrate many other technologies and systems. And we also have some affiliated companies that have grown out of Telemetrics. For example, we have a clinical support services company that is just getting off the ground that will provide that virtual nurse support and coaching for chronic care management. We also integrate other technologies and systems that are standalone outside of the EHR. We integrate that data back into the EHR. And the way that we think of things is very holistic and workflow driven, which is a bit different than most RPM companies in the sense that with our deep foundational knowledge of how Epic works, we actually have a team of staff that will go in and can either guide the customer on the configuration or even work as a consultant within their organization to do the configuration in the system for them. And then that data comes from the EHR into Telemetrics, and then we provision devices and the data starts to flow back and we file it. But beyond filing the data in a place that's meaningful for the patient, we also understand the billing aspects. Mm-hmm. And so we help with configuring and sending charges, and we have some logic in our system. So it's really grown to be more than remote patient monitoring. Technologies such as remote physical therapy. We have that integrated. We also acquired another specific technology, a wearable patch that has 11 FDA approved algorithms that are proprietary that can predict heart failure in as much as a week before an event happens, so you can have early intervention. And that we have integrated that technology as well, and we're waiting to hear the final word, but we're up for an innovation award with HIMSS. So we're excited about that as well. So
Excellent.
lots going on at Telemetrics, and we continue to grow. So it's exciting.
It is, and it's such a long career, right? And I love that you said you took a break to pursue your PhD because that's really not a break, but I'll give you that. But
It wasn't.
it is I love to ask people about their journey because everyone is unique, but we all start out the same, where we are either at the bedside or in the community, and we know that we can make a difference and help shape the future of the technology that is affecting our colleagues that are with patients. And you hear it time and time again. Everybody says the same thing, but we all head in different directions. So even though you are president, you have had such a long career. Um, I also know that you are currently the co-chair for the Alliance for Nursing Informatics, ANI, and I had not heard about that ever until just a few years ago when I had the opportunity to participate at the governing directors meeting because I worked for for a software company um, that also participate there. So this is a group of tell us all about it. I don't want to get into it and butcher it, but I do know that it's co-sponsored by HIMSS and AMIA. So tell us about A&I and getting into that whole piece of it because that's growing outside of what your job is, what you're currently doing. So tell us about all of that.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I have long been a supporter of professional development and participating in professional organizations. Back when I was in perinatal nursing, I was a very active member of AWON, Association of Women's Health Obstetric and Neonatal Nurses, held several leadership roles there. And when I got into the world of healthcare IT, I was introduced to HIMSS, the Health Information Management System Society. And across the years, became more and more involved and engaged in HIMSS. At one point, served as the chair of the HIMSS Nursing Informatics Committee, and went on to participate further, was asked to eventually become a member leading policy and advocacy via ANI as that group was formalized. And as I worked through my policy work through the Alliance for Nursing Informatics, I was eventually asked to take on the role of chair. The Alliance for Nursing Informatics is an organization of organizations. So we have 29 member organizations, and those organizations vary everything from, that is broad, such as the American Organization of Nurse Leaders, ANA, to more specific members like ANIA, ANIA, as well as NENIC and other informatics focus groups. We also have some vendor participation on that in the organization and governing directors meeting that you referred to, Constance. And it's really interesting and exciting work because you get to engage with people who are really at the forefront and doing some interesting work, and there's an opportunity to collaborate with other organizations. And the whole premise behind the original design of the Alliance for Nursing Informatics, some of our early nursing informatics leaders in the Alliance included, Dean Connie Delaney, Dr. Connie Delaney from the University of Minnesota, Joyce Sensmeyer, who's now retired as the VP of Informatics at HIMSS, many other, Judy Murphy, Many other really well-known leaders kind of came together originally as a discussion about how do we bring all of these different work efforts across the country, and more than across the US. Actually, we have some international membership. How do we bring that together as a single voice for nursing informatics? And that's really the vision and mission of ANI, is to really create this collaboration across all of these different member organizations, so that we can present a unified single voice for nursing informatics.
I thank you for going into that, because it's so important. I think that our members, even locally, our members in our Greater Delaware Valley group that are listening, and hopefully beyond that, start to really learn and understand what all of these different organizations are doing. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, so you said that there are 29 organizations as part of this organization. And I know from my experience just being at a meeting that there's so much work going on. I can't imagine the work that you have to do as chair. But there's so much work going on at each one of these organizations. Tell us how you bring them together in these governing directors meetings. I know that they give updates and things like that, but how does the work get identified that you eventually start to go toward working on with all of these groups, and just help us sort that out a little bit?
Sure. There are a few different factions or segments within the Alliance for Nursing Informatics. There's the executive, group, which is my co-chair, Susan Hull, and myself, as well as the sponsoring organizations, HIMSS and AMIA. They each bring some support for the organization. So they provide a lot of the administrative, running the meetings and kind of keeping things on track, keeping minutes, etc. And then there is a steering committee, which includes not only voting members, but some non-voting members who are really there to guide some of the dialogue, like ANA and others. And then there is a policy committee, and the policy committee, it's really grown tremendously. And a lot of the ANI work initially and historically has been around ensuring that we have a unified voice and weigh in on public policy. And so there is a lot of work that goes on. That group initially used to meet every other month. Now they are meeting monthly. And there are so many initiatives where we really believe it's important to have a nursing and nursing informatics voice in those initiatives. So that's a real wide cast of membership from across ANI member organizations. So you don't have to be necessarily in a governing director's role to be on the policy committee. You could just be a member of any of the ANI member organizations to be part of the policy committee. And then there is the governing directors, and the governing directors put forward leaders who will represent each of the organizations. So we meet with the governing directors twice a year, once around the HIMSS meeting that takes place annually, and once around the AMIA annual conference, which is coming up in just another week, or a little more than a week. In any event, at that meeting, we try to gather information from member organizations before the meeting to really drive some of the dialogue that happens at the meeting. Included in that are things such as a report out for perhaps what are the top initiatives your organization is working on and or interested in collaborating with others. In addition to that, We have had some other work efforts. One that I think is most exciting that has taken place since the last governing directors meeting. Judy Murphy actually at that last meeting kind of called all of the membership there, you know, to be accountable for some action-oriented work. As opposed to, comments are great. We want to, continue to do the policy work, but what are some things that we really want to take action on as an organization, a member organization? And coming out of that, one of the things that we had talked about at the last meeting was evolving care models with technology. And what are the things that nursing leaders need to know as those care models are evolving related to technology? And Patricia Mook took that away as the representative from AONL to really lead some wonderful work where a meeting took place a few weeks back now. And it was an intensive meeting that lasted a couple of hours, but there were people from academia, people from nursing leadership in healthcare organizations, people from the vendor community. And then Susan and I were both also asked to participate in that work effort. And it was really wonderful work that I am hopeful will just be the beginning, but that's an example of something that grew out of discussion and collaboration at one of our governing directors meetings. So, and then the last thing I'll mention is something that we do and is now open for application, and that's called the Emerging Leaders program through ANI. And in order to apply for that, you only have to be a member of one of the 29 member organizations to participate. And you can apply. And essentially what we are looking to do is support the work and offer mentorship. And so typically we select 2 candidates for the new, our next iteration will be 24 and 25. We're just winding up the 22-23 class. And we usually select 2 members, and they're assigned mentors who meet regularly with them, and they work on a project that they propose in their application. And so some exciting work has come out of that, and we have seen some tremendous leaders come out of that program as well. People like Dr. Vicky Tiasi. She's done some fascinating work. Dr. Sarah Rossetti, many other leaders. If you look, in fact, if you want to see, you can find more information about the Emerging Leaders Program on the Alliance for Nursing Informatics website.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was actually perusing before we got on the call today to take a look to see what work was happening. And thank you for giving us that example, because I think that folks in their organizations, they're in the weeds, they're at the bedside, they are, working really hard every day. But I think sometimes when you pick your head up to take a breath, you sometimes wonder, you hear about these things that we're talking about, but you wonder how it really affects them in the organizations. And the example that you gave with AONL, having all of the work and all of the discussions and getting into these, intense meetings going on for a few hours and really coming out of it where the nurse leaders, CNOs, CNIOs who are part of and participate in AONL, they're hearing about this and they're taking it back to their organization. So that's where you really see it working. And care models around the technology, I think, has been talked about for quite some time, but accelerated, of course, with COVID, because everybody just jumped in and started doing it. And I think now everybody's having a chance to take a step back and say, how did we use it? and how should we be using it appropriately going forward. So I love that example.
Thanks. I think it's really important for us to think about, you know, as clinicians, we come into the field of nursing really most interested in helping patients. And our goal is to, whatever we do, whatever tools or technology we use, we're using it to help patients. And so it's important that, we think about technology not for technology's sake, but how does the technology do the heavy lifting so the nurse can focus more on the caring intervention with the patient and family. And that's what drives me every day in all aspects of the work that I do. People think, remote patient monitoring, that's really in the home, how you involve, will you influence, policy and protocol in how patients are being responded to or reached out to and engaged with, and what their patient experience is. And so, always thinking about both the clinical side of the equation as well as the patient side of the equation. And technology is just a tool, right? And it can help you or it can get in the way. And so my goal is to make sure it doesn't get in the way and that it really brings some efficiency.
That's excellent. And I think that's what we all hope for in the end. And we're fortunate that we have folks like you in the driver's seat who have been around the block a time or two and are still very much part of the industry and helping to continue to shape the future of the industry. So I'm just going to ask you one more question. For those who may be just beginning their journey, or those thinking about it that might be listening to this, maybe you could give us a little bit of your insight and the importance of being part of industry committees and networking and getting outside of their box, outside of their organizational box. What do you say to those folks?
Oh gosh, there's such a big world out there. And as I have traveled across the country working in healthcare IT, when I meet folks and they say, "Oh, we're different here," most of the time, you may have some variation, but really you're not as different as you think you are. And there's so much learning that you can gain, and ideas and innovation that comes from networking with people outside of your organization. And I learned that first at A1, as an involved member of A1, and had an opportunity to travel to A1's national office in DC and network with leaders there. One leader, whom we've had similar paths, but completely didn't see each other for probably 10 years, have now come back together to collaborate on a few different levels. And that's Dr. Kathy Ivory. She also, I had met her initially at an A1 meeting in Washington, DC, and now she is very engaged in informatics and is an informatics nursing leader. So you never know who you're going to meet across the years and across time, but it's really important to grow your network, because I can't say enough about the personal and professional growth you gain from participating in professional organizations.
Yes, I couldn't have said it any better. And I am sure that you are inspiring many people right now listening to this. I'm sure you are, because this is exactly what we want to get to. We want folks to get involved at any level, really, even just, and I'll put a little plug in again for our Greater Delaware Valley ENEA chapter, to get involved in some of the committees and at least network with the folks that are around you in your area, right? Get started there. Listening to podcasts like this, I think, is great, and we're reaching outside to the rest of the country and start talking to other people that we definitely need to be speaking with, like you, Dr. Beale, and definitely globally too. We're reaching outside of our box to make sure that we're talking to folks across the globe. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been so insightful.
Oh, well, my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. And if I could say anything to listeners out there who are thinking about, maybe I'm not an expert, how do I get involved? All you have to do is raise your hand. And then it's over time that you gain the knowledge and, gain your expertise. So you don't have to be an expert. All you have to do is raise your hand.
I love it. Great parting thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Beale. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll join us again for another session of Informatically Speaking.
This has been a production of the Greater Delaware Valley chapter of the American Nursing Informatics Association. For more information about the GDV ANIA chapter, visit us at community.ania.org/Greater Delaware Valley/home.